Welcome to the Foothills, a Colorado lifestyle and real estate podcast featuring mountain home real estate broker Robert Martin, who has over 25 years of experience assisting clients reach their goals and move forward. Tune in each week for a dynamic conversation with experts, Colorado adventurers, and residents that explores the ins, outs, and specific nuances of buying the perfect mountain home or selling your dream home in Evergreen, Conifer, Bailey, and surrounding areas to catch a glimpse into the Colorado lifestyle that's a part of you.
We have the wonderful pleasure of visiting with Kirk Dieter today. Kirk, you've been around a long time, lots of fly fishing knowledge, a great outdoorsman. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, thanks for having me, Robert. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Kirk.
Yeah.
It's always good to be seen, that's for sure.
No doubt, no doubt. So, we first met when you helped us find our home when we were moving from Philadelphia to the Denver area, which was a leap of faith, but it was kind of we were a little bit ahead of our time. Now so many people work from home and telecommute or work remote or whatever, but I was a writer and an outdoor writer at that, and had decided that I wanted to live in the Rockies. And so made the wholesale leap with my wife, Sarah, and found you and found a home, in the Conifer area. And from there, it was a classic example of, if you do what you love, things tend to work out for you. It was karma. So took that leap of faith, and I became an editor at large for Field and Stream magazine. And I was their fly fishing editor of sorts, and founded a magazine that I'm still the editor of called Angling Trade, which covers the business of fly fishing. Fly fishing had always been a passion of mine. I grew up in the upper Midwest, but all my favorite trips were to the mountains. And so that's why we decided to go there. Plus, Denver was kind of centrally located, and at that time, I had to travel all over the world. I got to travel all over the world. But Denver was a great place. If we couldn't go direct from Denver, you could connect easily to somewhere that could. But anyway, and now I'm the editor-in-chief of TROUT Media, which is Trout Unlimited, a national conservation organization, and Trout Magazine. And that's a homecoming of sorts. So my job basically has been to, fish and go all over the world and write stories about it. And I was lucky enough to do that from Colorado.
Yeah, that's spectacular. And I agree with you. Find something you love and what you're passionate about. And if you can do it, time flies by very, very fastly, or very, very swift. How long have you been fishing for, Kirk?
I could fish since I was walking. I could walk, and I'm not going to say how. I'm not going to date how I've been fishing.
Date yourself there.
No. But I've always been into fishing. I was a fishy little dude. I used to ride my bike. Grew up, like I said, in the Midwest, and in Wisconsin, I would ride my little Schwinn Stingray over to the shore and cast, before school, and sometimes come home with a fish, and my mom would get mad at me because I'd be all smelling like fish before she had to put me on the school bus. But I loved fishing from the earliest ages. And then I took up fly fishing, to impress a girl. I was dating her, and her dad was really into fly fishing. So I went to visit, and sure enough, they gave me a fly rod to let me try it. And I liked it so much that her dad knew I was the one. And we've been married for 32 years now. It all worked out.
It worked out, huh? It was Sarah. That's cool.
With my wife, Sarah.
And what inspired you to start writing about fishing?
I've always considered I was an English major in school, and was a sports reporter out of school. And I've covered everything from boxing to Olympic sports to, food. I once wrote a story for 5280 magazine about the best hot dogs in Denver. I've always considered myself a writer who happened to fish, and not a fisherman who wrote. So the craft and fishing has always been where I've channeled my energy, but the craft of writing has always been at the forefront of that. So I was writing and doing well, but had this side passion of fishing that I liked. And I was able to just slowly merge the two of them and got discovered, and I got breaks. Charlie Myers, who was the outdoors editor of the Denver Post, kind of discovered me and became my mentor and helped me along and made connections. And then I was
Did you guys,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, you guys wrote a book together, right? The Little Red Book of Fly Fishing.
we did.
And it has, that was just, I did get the book, I listened to it, and that was very interesting. It's very, very detailed.
The idea was Charlie and I had done so much writing and covered so much fishing that we thought it's not rocket science. And a lot of people make money talking about fishing and how hard it is. It's kind of like golf, where they can analyze your swing and give you all these physics lessons. But then in golf, Harvey Pinnock wrote the Little Red Book of Golf, his Little Red Book, and it was simple lessons like take dead aim. And Charlie and I were driving through the night to Wyoming one time, and we're going to do a story. He was doing it for the Denver Post, and I was doing it for Field and Stream magazine. And we decided, let's do a little book together that's just simple tips to make this real easy and accessible for everybody. So we did, and we poured our notebooks together, and we came up with these tips. And that little book has been like the little engine that could. It keeps selling and doing well, and sold over 100,000 copies of it. And and I miss Charlie. He passed away right as the book was coming out. He never saw it in hardcover. He saw it in draft form. But I'll never forget nor be able to repay what he did for me as a new resident of Colorado, as someone who was figuring my way out through outdoor writing, as an author, or someone who wanted to climb. He did so much for me, and I dedicate a lot of what I do now to trying to pay that forward.
Sounds like a really special person. Now the book has 5 parts, and without giving away everything, can you talk a little bit about each section of the Little Red?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for asking. Well, fly fishing, the more you do it, and some people get intimidated by fly fishing. They see all these fancy loops and knots and flies and everything, and they think, how in the world am I ever going to do that? Or someone later in life, how am I going to pick this up? Or someone who's a kid who doesn't have a mentor to do it. And it's really simpler than people think. And you can break it down into 5 areas. You can break it down into casting. That's what we all talk about. Probably the least important part. You don't have to have a perfect cast to catch fish. It's pretty, it's fun to work on. It's like a golf swing, but it's not the price of admission. Flies and knowing what bugs that the fish eat. That's another thing that you should spend some time learning. Presentation, what happens after your fly hits the water, how it behaves is important. And then, reading the water, knowing where to put the fly in the first place. That's really big part of it too. So, and then the 5th part is miscellaneous, which is just kind of a catch-all for anything that we forgot to put in the other 4 parts. But if you learn a little bit in each of those 4 areas, just enough to get going in the game. And especially, in places like Colorado, there's so many opportunities to get in the game. It's easy.
I don't fly fish a lot, but one thing that got me about the book was when he's talking about casting, and one way to do it is taking like the old phones that used to be on the wall hung phones.
Right.
And you would cast back like you're hanging up the phone, and then you're answering the phone. Right. That's something that resonated. Yeah, it resonated with me if I was going to do something. So the information is real practical, and it just seems to be real common sense. And like you said, you have so many ideas for different things. Somebody, there's something in there for everybody. I guess the different ways you describe things.
Well, that was the hope, and it was really not. Neither of us thought it was anything more than just saying, "Hey, look, it doesn't have to be that hard." Charlie's mantra to me was, every angler in this world should endeavor to replace himself or herself, to have someone else who cares about the rivers and how And certainly, I'm certainly not as good a writer or a mentor as Charlie is, but I've taken his lessons to heart, and I'm trying to pay that forward, and so on and so forth. So the more people that can get in and not feel intimidated by this whole thing, and enjoy the rivers and take care of them, the better off we all are.
Yeah, creating stewards, so to speak.
Stewards, for sure.
Yeah, you have fished all over the world, Kirk. What is your favorite location?
Colorado.
That's
good. I'm not just saying that, and I'm on record. Someone, if you asked around, if people who've heard me speak in the past, I say that I'm lucky. I've been all over the world. I've been to Ireland. I've been in Russia, above the Arctic Circle. I've been in the flats, the Amazon jungle, Tasmania, New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, you name it. I choose to live where I live for a reason. And I've always felt that way. I've never regretted the decision to move to Colorado, and I still live in Colorado for that very reason. I think it's the best of all worlds, culturally, geographically, just the sheer beauty. There's a lot of public access. There's private water, but there's public if you hike and get back into our national forest and all that. And it's still challenging. I mean, I'm still learning stuff here.
I agree. I think most people that do make the move to Colorado, different areas of Colorado, there's just so much to do, and they enjoy the serenity and the peace, and they find their little slice of Colorado, whether it's fly fishing or hiking or mountain biking or skiing. So which fishing story is your favorite to tell?
Oh, wow. Fishing story. What's the funny thing about fishing stories is the best fishing stories often don't have anything to do with fish.
Right.
Right.
I bet you got a bunch.
There's often the stories about it's like a band being on the road when you're with your photographers, and doing these stories for magazines. But yeah, there's been some really amazing things that I've seen that I've never imagined that I'd see. I've been in a Bolivian army base with $10,000 cash on the table, negotiating, helicopter flights into the jungle, protection from the narcos, with some guys from Argentina, because we wanted to go find Dorado in the jungle.
Hopefully it's worth it, huh?
Yeah, totally worth it.
Yeah.
I've been, up above the Arctic Circle and seen the Northern Lights many times, and always different every time.
That would be cool.
Yeah, being in Tasmania with the wallabies, jump up and mini kangaroos as you're fishing, and I've been casting in the river and look down, and a duck-billed platypus sticks its face up to look, and you think, wow, how did I ever get here? How did I ever get here?
That's amazing. So just the places you've been able to go and fish all over the world. That's really amazing. Yeah. Well, it's all tied into what you do and who you are. What's it like being the editor of Trout Magazine, editor at large at Field and Stream, and editor in chief of Angling Trade?
Each is a different thing. Field and Stream, I don't do as much work with them now, but I still love Field and Stream. I'm really proud of my affiliation with Field and Stream. Being discovered and starting to work with Field and Stream was like, if you're a baseball player, that's getting you Yankee pinstripes. So as a kid who loved to fish and hunt just growing up, and read those stories, and then became an outdoor writer, working with Field and Stream was literally like being, on the New York Yankees roster.
Kind of the pinnacle.
Yeah, it was, and it still is. It's something I wear with great pride. The Angling Trade is neat because I get to know all the gear and gizmos, so I get the inside scoop on what's coming out and what people are going to fish with next year. I kind of have an idea of what's going to happen and the trends and the market and all that. And I've made a lot of good friends in that industry and community. And then Trout Unlimited gives you a sense of purpose, because none of this is possible if the resources aren't taken care of, right? If there are no rivers, clean, cold water to fish on, none of everything that we've been talking about for the last, however many minutes even exists anywhere in the world. It all is dependent on a very fragile ecosystem and cold, clean water that support trout and clean flats that have saltwater fish and all that stuff. So having an eye toward conservation has always been really, really important. So that's why that role as editor of Trout Magazine is really important to me.
For sure. Yeah, it all ties together, it sounds. So shift gears just a little bit, and you talk about what it was like to buy your mountain home. I know you recently bought a new one in the Steamboat area, then also to sell your home in the Foothills area. Maybe any tidbits there that might be informative for those thinking of doing either of those.
Well, the only regret I ever had about moving to the mountains was that I hadn't done it sooner. A lot of people come from somewhere else. I had Colorado connections dating back into the 80s, and that my folks and so forth, we would come and visit and all that. And I always knew where I wanted to end up, but we didn't know where exactly in Colorado. And then we drew, as you know, because Sarah came out, we had drawn a circle around the airport, knowing that I'd have to travel. And you found a place that was like an hour and 5 minutes outside of the airport in that circle and showed it to us. And I remember you took Sarah and Sarah's sister, and they were so enamored with it, and they sent me pictures and stuff. And this was all before Zooming and all that stuff. It was like
late 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 1999. And then I remember I countered sight unseen. Like the owner said, okay, well, here's this. And he countered. And then I said, okay, here's our offer. And Sarah was hanging in the air. And I had never seen it. The first time I ever saw the house was the day we closed on it, which was
good thing you liked it.
How excited I was and how much I trusted Sarah and how much I trusted you at that time. And then we spent 20 happy years there and raised our son there, and all these things that we talked about career-wise for me came to pass as I had dreamed, as I was moving there. Those were all just dreams, and they became realities. And not to mention a day-to-day life of, waking up in the mountains. And funny thing was, in that area where we lived, you could tell there are some people who would come and they'd last for a winter or two. Not that the winters were that hard, but they just weren't meant for the mountains. And then there are some people who came and you could tell right away they're going to be here for as long as they want to be here. And
yeah, that's a really good point, because you do see that. And I sometimes tell people the best time to look at a home is in the throes of a snowstorm, so you can see what the road's going to be like, what exposure you have, that sort of thing. What things do you think people should consider when purchasing a mountain home?
Well, things have changed now since what they were before. With the internet's a lot different than it was.
For sure.
Your phone and cellular services, your connectivity is so different than it was back then.
So true.
Like I was chopping wood, man, to keep the house warm, and have dial-up internet, and would, go out to the corner of the road and have tinfoil on my head if I want to talk on my cell phone when it all started. Sure. And now that's all like a thing of the past. That's all ancient history. We're all connected much better. But I would think you ultimately have to have a genuine appreciation for the land and the animals and the scenery and the mountains and the weather. You have to like it when the thunder claps and it's really loud off the side of the mountain. You have to like the rushing rain when it comes sheeting off the roof in a mountain. You have to love waking up in the morning and wading thigh deep in snow, and appreciate those things for the uniquely beautiful mountain living things that they are, because you're not living in, it's not Disneyland. There's no facsimile. Even though the times have changed and the connectivity has changed, it's still a real mountain environment. And I would trade that for the world.
You're exactly right with just feeling that, kind of that oneness of living here. And you're right. Some people, it feels good, but it just doesn't work. But to get up here and it's interesting that you kind of, all those things that you wanted to happen happened. I mean, you had a lot of, things you wanted to manifest in your life as far as living in Colorado, and it happened. Basically, you're living your dream. And but it is, one critical point too also is that the internet service is so critical today as so many people work from home. And I always tell people, when you're looking for a house, that needs to be one of your first points of due diligence, is to make sure you've got an internet connection that you're comfortable with. So
All right, and
that's critical.
there are different levels, and each one has its own comfort. But I'll go back to, like, as I endeavor to become a storyteller with my career, sometimes not being connected, sometimes seeing the mountains and looking at the details and watching the deer in my backyard and watching the red-tailed hawk soar overhead and thinking those
Sure.
things shape me as a writer and an outdoorsman in ways that you can't glean by absorbing things through the internet.
Gotcha.
So it's the real deal, and it's the
Mhm.
real opportunity to experience that. And
For
you
sure,
asked
we live
me
among.
the advice. The advice is to take the time to experience it for what it's really worth, and not make it some place that's, where you park and say, okay, now I live in the mountains. Well, that's
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's wonderful. Thanks, Kirk. So, where can people go to learn more about you?
oh well, I'm not that exciting a story, but if you want to learn more
Well, if
about
they want some more tidbits on
the
life.
stories that we run, yeah, you can go to Trout Unlimited. TU.org is a good place, and I'm the editor there, and you'll see the stories that we run, or fieldandstream.com or anglingtrade.com. Just Google me. I kind of pop up in odd places when it comes to fishing. So
That sounds good. Well, anything you'd like to add, Kirk? I really appreciate your time today.
no, just that it's good to connect with you as a friend. The thing of it is that you showed me the house that we bought in Colorado, and you sold that house 20 something years later, and we've maintained a relationship, and we still have a relationship as friends,
Yes.
even though I now live a few hours away, and we'll always be that way. So it's nice to, I think that says all you need to know about our relationship as, realtor and client or whatever.
Well, I appreciate that, Kirk, and I'm grateful as well. And thank you for your time today.
You got it, my friend.